She said it while buttering toast, meeting an old colleague for coffee later, like she was telling me she had a dentist appointment, light, harmless, skimming the surface. But before I could even respond, she added a line that didn't belong. "It's just coffee. Don't be old-fashioned." She smirked as she said it like she was joking, but it didn't land like a joke. There was a weight in the room that didn't match her words, like someone had opened a window in the middle of winter, and I couldn't quite tell where the draft was coming from. I looked up from my plate. "Who?" She said the name, short, clipped, two syllables I didn't recognize. "We worked together back at the firm, way back." No other details, no explanation, just a glance at the clock and a quick sip of her coffee. I nodded, said nothing else. I was careful not to let my eyes narrow, not to give her any more than that single syllable of acknowledgement. She didn't meet my gaze either. She stirred her coffee too long and tapped the spoon against the rim 3 times like she was waiting for the air to settle. "I'll be back before dinner," she added, slipping her phone into her bag. "You can work on your project this afternoon." I hated that she called it my project, like painting was a hobby, like the thing that used to light me up before corporate hours and mortgage meetings was now just something I did between dishes and drywall repairs. But I didn't say anything. That wasn't the battle I was fighting. She grabbed her bag off the chair, kissed the top of my head, not a real kiss, more a routine gesture, and she was gone with the scent of jasmine and the click of heels. I sat there in the quiet kitchen, toast growing cold beside me, and played the words back. "It's just coffee. Don't be old-fashioned." The first part, fine, maybe even true. But the second part, that's where the tone shifted. That wasn't reassurance. That was dismissal. Not only did she not want to explain it, she wanted to make me feel small for even raising the possibility that it could mean more. And it wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. I knew her tells. The slight raise of one eyebrow when she was bluffing. The too casual pitch in her voice when she was performing something she hadn't fully rehearsed. The way she leaned on sarcasm when she was hiding something sharp behind her back. And most of all, the smirk. She hadn't smiled at me like that in years, that sideways twist of the mouth, halfway between flirtation and condescension. But she gave it freely when she talked about meeting another man for coffee. I rinsed the dishes, washed her mug by hand like always, dried it, placed it upside down in the rack. It landed with a small echo. That sound stayed with me. We used to be partners, not just in name, in timing, in instinct. If one of us felt off, the other knew it before a word was spoken. But now, even her departures felt strategic, planned like an exit, not a routine. I walked into the den, sat in the old leather chair she said didn't match the decor anymore, and stared out the window at nothing. My reflection in the glass looked like someone waiting for bad news. What unsettled me wasn't the possibility that she was meeting someone. It was that I already knew the answer and I was still trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Still trying to be fair. That used to be a strength. Now I wasn't sure what it was. I didn't confront her. I didn't send a message or ask a second question. But I remembered the name. I remembered the smirk. And I remembered how she didn't ask me what my day looked like. That was the part I couldn't quite swallow. I watched the minutes slide by on the wall clock, and somewhere between 8:47 and 9:06 I decided I wouldn't stop her. Whatever door she thought she was opening with that coffee, she could walk through it. But it wouldn't swing both ways. That night I heard her laughing behind the bathroom door. Not the usual kind, not polite, not muted. It was a low, amused sound, one she usually reserved for something private or personal. The door was cracked open an inch, enough for the light to slice through the hallway like a boundary line. I walked past slowly, socked feet silent on the wood floor. Her voice dropped to a whisper. A name flashed briefly on the screen, the same one from breakfast. The name didn't belong to any of our friends. Not the group we vacationed with, not the ones who came over for game nights. I'd have remembered it if it had come up before. It hadn't. I didn't stop walking. I didn't pause or lean in. I just kept moving, slow and steady, until I reached the bedroom and sat down on the edge of the bed. The laughter behind the door stopped. She came out a minute later, smile still playing at the edge of her mouth. She didn't mention the call. "Everything okay?" I asked, watching the way she tucked her phone into the drawer without looking. "Fine," she said, then leaned in and kissed me, soft, precise. But something about it felt placed, like an actor hitting a mark. No warmth behind it, no pressure. Just enough to register. She slipped under the covers, turned on her side, and faced away from me. That was the moment I knew. She didn't try to bridge the silence between us. She didn't fill the space with casual small talk or routine affection. She let the silence settle, confident I wouldn't disturb it. The next morning I checked the mirror. My face looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Over the next few days, coffee became a familiar script. Tuesday, then Thursday. The name came up again. This time she called it a quick check-in. Then on Saturday she said she was helping him prep for a big pitch. The excuses weren't sloppy, they were measured, like she'd tested each one against a mental list and selected the most believable for each context. I didn't argue, I didn't prod, I let her believe I was staying put. But I started watching. I noticed how she dressed for these coffee meetings. Slightly more effort, hair down instead of tied back. A necklace I hadn't seen in a while. Lip color, even though she once said she hated the way it came off on mugs. And when she came home, her energy was always displaced. Not exactly guilty, not even distant, just distracted, like her head was in two places and mine wasn't one of them. Once she came in carrying a to-go cup with a boutique coffee logo. I asked how the catch-up went. She shrugged. Quick, nothing big. But the cup still had steam. And it was from a shop halfway across the city, not anywhere near the place she claimed to have gone. That detail sat with me all night. I didn't bring it up. I didn't need to. By then, I'd already started logging the pattern. I knew I couldn't confront her without proof. Not the kind that crumbles under deflection or doubles back into argument. I needed weight. I needed facts. I needed to be able to hold up her version of events next to reality and let them cancel each other out on their own. She thought she was writing a script I hadn't read. She was wrong. I had the first act memorized. I started with what she thought I'd forgotten, our shared digital logins. She never bothered to change the Apple ID on the family tablet. She used it mostly for reading or calendar updates, assuming no one else ever opened it. I hadn't touched it in months. But when I picked it up that Tuesday morning, it buzzed to life without a password. First, I checked the calendar app. She'd recently deleted 2 entries titled "Catch Up," both dated in the past 10 days. The deletion timestamps were visible in the backup history. One of them matched the day she'd come home later than usual, claiming she stopped to help her old colleague sort out an issue with his deck. Next, I moved to email. Nothing explicit, but there was a trail lift receipts forwarded from her inbox. One trip dropped her off at a boutique hotel downtown. Not a chain. Stylish, quiet, the kind of place known for discretion more than affordability. The drop-off was at 3:42 p.m. on a Friday. She came home that night around 7, saying traffic was a nightmare. I checked the ride history tied to her email and matched it to her Google location data. She turned off her history tracking months ago on her main phone, but the iPad still carried an old sync. Her location on that same Friday showed a 3-hour block at the hotel. No movement, no second destination. I didn't flinch. I just took a screenshot, saved it to a folder I named something plain, receipts. Not a dramatic title, not a vengeful one, just clinical. I moved on to the credit card statement next, the one tied to our joint account. I rarely checked it before. We split certain expenses but mostly trusted each other to keep the balance fair. 2 days after that hotel ride, she'd spent $62 at a coffee shop known more for ambience than caffeine. I remembered the cup from that visit, matte black with gold lettering. She kept it in her hand the whole evening like it was proof of something mundane. I'd offered to make us coffee at home. She declined. That same day, a second charge, 2 hours later, showed up at a bar known for its wine list and velvet booths. Quick coffee didn't usually involve Bordeaux. I cataloged it all. Then came the cloud sync. She used her phone to take photos, but they still backed up to the shared cloud. One recent image, half-cropped, showed 2 mugs on a polished wood table, hers, recognizable by the chipped glaze near the handle, and another across from it. A man's hand rested beside the second mug, tan, veined, with a tattoo visible just above the wrist. Not a small one, a phrase in cursive, hard to read but clearly not new. She once told me tattoos were a desperation accessory. I guess perspectives change. I stared at that image for a long time, not because I needed to, because I wanted to freeze how it felt, to remember what clarity looked like. Not fury, not devastation, just clarity, plain and irreversible. I saved the photo, created subfolders, location, spending, deleted images. No one else knew what I was doing. I kept smiling. I made dinner. I washed the dishes. I folded her laundry. We even laughed once, something about a show we both used to love. She leaned against me like nothing was shifting beneath her, but I'd already marked the floorboards. I wasn't looking to catch her in a lie. I was building a record she couldn't erase. The first time I noticed the change in how she dressed, it was a Tuesday. She used to head out in jeans and a sweater when running errands. That morning she left in tailored black slacks, a fitted blouse, and perfume I hadn't smelled in months. Not strong, not obvious, but deliberate. The kind that lingered just long enough to register. I didn't ask where she was going. She said something vague like groceries and a few things for the house. I nodded and returned to the kitchen. But I heard the change. It was in the cadence of her voice, like she was performing normalcy rather than inhabiting it. She developed a rhythm, a script. One where she played the part of a busy wife with nothing to hide, and I played the quiet husband who didn't press. That same afternoon, I checked the app again. She never made it to the grocery store. She spent nearly an hour inside a restaurant she'd once called pretentious. Sat at a corner table, according to the location pin. The same place we used to go on our anniversaries, back before she decided fancy meals were unnecessary gestures. When she came home that evening, she tossed her coat on the couch and said, "The line at Trader Joe's was hell." Then kissed me on the cheek and went to change. The lipstick mark didn't match the color she wore at breakfast. I didn't ask. I started noticing the laughter next, not hers, theirs. She had a new laugh, one I'd never heard before. It came out when she texted late at night, just faint enough to be private but steady. A chuckle followed by silence. A pause before she locked her phone and placed it face down beside the bed. We used to fall asleep reading next to each other. Now her side of the bed glowed blue long after I turned off my light. The passwords changed sometime that week. First her email, then her phone lock screen. I never asked for them. She'd given them freely before, casually, like it meant nothing. Now the lock was intentional. I tested it once while she was in the shower. A simple pattern. It was different, not even close to the old one. That told me more than any email would have. She wasn't being cautious. She was signaling control. The real blow came at dinner with friends. It was a Saturday night, and we were at a small table in the back of a bistro with two other couples. Everyone was drinking wine and retelling stories we'd all heard before, pretending the punchlines still hit the same way. Somewhere between the appetizers and the second bottle, someone asked if she'd been busy lately. She waved her hand. "Just coffee meetings here and there. She gestured at me with her fork, thinks I'm running off with a latte." Laughter, real belly-deep laughter from the group. One friend nearly choked on his drink. Someone slapped the table. She laughed too, loud and relaxed. I smiled. I tilted my glass, nodded like it was harmless. But inside I went still. I felt every detail in the room, the scrape of a chair leg, the flicker of candlelight off a water glass, the quiet hum of a song playing overhead. All of it burned into place. My pulse slowed. I memorized the temperature of my wine, the texture of the napkin, the look in her eyes when she turned back to me. That wasn't a joke. That was a dare. She was gauging how far she could go, how close she could bring the truth to the surface without naming it. I looked at her the way you look at a building after the fires already gutted the walls, seeing not what's there, but what's gone. That night, I lay awake long after she fell asleep beside me, her back turned, breathing slow and I remembered when she used to text me from work just to say she missed my voice. Now I hadn't heard her say my name all week. And the worst part, she didn't even realize how loud the silence had become. She wasn't hiding a secret anymore. She was building a new truth, one where I was already absent and she didn't think I'd notice. It started with a name I hadn't heard in years. One night, buried 3 folders deep in her email's trash bin, I found a thread titled simply, "Long Time, the Sender." A name she once swore she'd never utter again. Not to me, not to anyone. I remembered him the second I saw it. We were still dating when she told me about him, the man who wrecked her 20s, who taught her what not to want. She called him damaging, self-centered, the kind of choice you regret once and carry with you long enough to swear it won't happen again. "Everyone has a ghost," she'd said back then, curling against my side on a late October evening. He's mine, but I'm not haunted anymore. At the time, I'd believed her. Why wouldn't I? But now, here he was not just haunting her inbox, haunting our marriage. Their messages stretched back months. Not romantic at first, not overtly. She played cautious. Polite check-ins, casual nostalgia, old photos of mutual friends. But the tone shifted around mid-May. Her replies came quicker, warmer, more detailed, and his grew bolder, lines about unfinished chapters, jokes about how he never could forget the way she held a grudge. Then there was the line that hit me like a slow, cold punch to the ribs. "I can't believe you're still in that house." Not your house, that house, as if it had always belonged to someone else. I searched deeper bank records this time. The separate account I'd found a few weeks earlier, the one she claimed was for personal expenses, now showed attorney payments. Not consultations, retainers. Two spaced a month apart. I cross-referenced the dates with her calendar backups. On the same day she said she was getting lunch with a friend from yoga, she was sitting in a law office downtown. The one that happened to specialize in high-asset divorces. My throat dried, but I didn't stop reading. She'd been drafting an exit, quietly, cleanly. Not with confrontation, not with drama, but with precision. She wasn't running away with someone. She was constructing a scenario where I'd look like the one who never saw it coming. I found a draft labeled Updates Postnup in her cloud notes. It was chilling. Language about property division, home equity adjustments, an added clause about preserving premarital assets at hers specifically. Then came the message to her mother. Buried in a thread of weekend plans and family gossip, one line stood out like rot in fresh bread. "If I play this right, I keep the house." That wasn't a sentence someone writes by accident. I sat back from the desk and stared at the monitor. Not in shock, not anymore. That part had already passed. This was the clean, cold clarity that follows it. The kind that makes everything still. She wasn't torn. She wasn't confused or caught in doubt. If there was guilt, it never made it past the surface. She was betting on silence, on my unwillingness to look, but I'd been looking, quietly, methodically. Every move she'd made to cover her tracks had been matched by mine to uncover them. And now I knew the full shape of it, not just betrayal, but betrayal with foresight. She wasn't just leaving. She was planning to rewrite the story of how it happened, frame by frame. Make it look mutual, make it look civil, make it look like I handed her the door. She was wrong. The door would open, but not the way she thought. I cleaned the house that Sunday like it was a ritual, not for her, not for show, for closure. Every surface got scrubbed, every forgotten corner dusted. I folded her laundry slow, exact, not out of affection, out of finality. There's a certain silence that only comes from finishing something you once thought would last forever. I leaned into it. In the kitchen, I set her favorite coffee mug by the sink. The same one she used every morning, white ceramic, chipped on the handle, the words "good things take time" printed in gold. It used to mean something. Now it felt like a joke without a punchline. I placed it with care. Centered, clean. By the front door, I laid out 3 items. A signed lease transfer, notarized and filed. My name removed from the house. Her name remaining pending approval from the landlord, which I already knew would be denied once her income was reviewed. A folder labeled simply Timeline. Inside were printed screenshots, calendar entries, ride receipts, bank transfers, the message to her mother, all of it arranged chronologically with dates and source details. I didn't write commentary. I didn't add accusation. The truth didn't need dressing, her keys. I set them on top of the folder, metal against manila, and watched them stay still. Then came the note, not long, not bitter, just honest. You said it was just coffee. I believed you until I didn't. This door only opens one way. I won't be here when it closes. I signed it, not with my name, just the first letter. I left it beside the keys, clean, unfolded, obvious. I didn't wait for her to come home. I took my duffel, packed earlier with care, not panic, and walked out. No slamming doors, no dramatic last glance. Just the sound of the latch clicking shut behind me. Final. Hollow. Outside, the air hit different. Like the weather didn't know what I'd left behind. I got in the car. Drove. There was no destination waiting, just distance. And for the first time in months, distance felt like control. She texted later that night. One line, "Where are you?" I didn't respond. The next morning, more came through. The tone changed. Concern, then confusion, then attempts at indignation. I didn't respond to those either. She called twice. I let it ring. Watched the name flash and vanish. There's a kind of peace that doesn't feel like peace at all, more like a sharp inhale held too long. But beneath it, something stronger was building. Not relief, not victory, something cleaner. Resolve. She thought this would end in negotiation. That I'd fight her for the house, argue over the details, plead for explanations. She didn't expect silence. She didn't expect stillness. She didn't expect the note. That's what made it a one-way door, and she knew it. She kept calling for 2 more days. Always late, always from the car, as if movement might soften what was already settled. The messages shifted quickly from confusion to defensiveness to carefully staged hurt. "I wish you just talked to me. You misunderstood everything. This isn't how grown people handle problems." I didn't answer, not because I didn't have words, because none of the ones I'd say would matter to her. The folder I'd left said everything she refused to. Her silence had been strategic. Mine was final. I moved into a one-bedroom near the edge of the city. Quieter. No shared walls. A place with light that came in through the blinds at an angle that didn't feel like memory. I brought only what I needed: clothes, a few books, some canvases I hadn't touched in years. The essentials, the honest pieces. She tried to spin her story. Our friends heard it first. Some bought in, the ones who always thought I was too reserved, the ones who mistook composure for coldness. But most of them didn't. The ones who'd been around long enough to recognize patterns saw through it. One of our closest mutual friends, someone I once trusted to be her advocate, sent me a message a week later. "I didn't believe her when she said you just left. Not like that. I always knew if you walked away, you'd have a reason." That was the only response I sent all week. Just 2 words. "I did." She stayed in the house for another month, trying to secure the lease in her name. The landlord declined after reviewing her paperwork. Too many late payments from her separate account. Too much uncertainty about income. By the second week of August, she was packing. Not just her things, the illusions too. Her old flame didn't last. I knew it wouldn't. He wasn't there for a new life, just the fantasy of revision. They fell apart before fall began. I heard second-hand that she moved in with a friend. I didn't care enough to confirm it. What mattered was what didn't follow me. I didn't bring guilt. I didn't bring the past, but I brought the ache, not sharp, just constant like the pressure in a room that's too quiet. In the evenings I painted, not to escape, not to rebuild what she tore, just to remember who I was before I traded instinct for comfort, passion for predictability. I started with harsh lines, flat tones. Over time they softened, not because I healed quickly, because I let myself feel slowly. The hardest part wasn't letting her go. It was realizing I'd spent years negotiating with someone who'd already chosen another life long before she admitted it. Every normal dinner, every half-kiss goodnight, every quiet weekend was built on a parallel script I wasn't allowed to read. Now I don't need it. Some nights I still walk past the old coffee shop, the one she lied about, the one she used as cover. I don't go in, but I glance through the window, not out of anger, to remind myself what the beginning of the end looked like. She said it was just coffee, but some cups come with a bill you don't see until you've already paid everything. I walked out still owing something, but not to her, to myself. And this time I'm collecting.